18-month nightmare campaign. About a decade ago, I was a player in a D&D 3E campaign, which was so horrible, so awful, that the details are burned into my memory. This is a long one, and I'm giving the abridged version. The campaign started at first level. When I finally quit, after about 18 months of weekly 6-hour sessions, usually with 2 to 3 combat encounters each, we just reached 6th level. I played a divination wizard. The other players were a monk and a rogue. Between us, we had every single skill at maximum proficiency and good ability modifiers. The DM set skill check DCs so arbitrarily high that we never succeeded on anything. The story was that we were escorting a chosen one and her DM PC bodyguard to a faraway city and doing quests in each town we visited, because thou must. The Chosen One would heal us up between fights with her Chosen One's powers, which was helpful because we ended up every single encounter unconscious on the floor. We'd wake up to the Chosen One healing us up, the DMPC having killed the remaining enemies with her magical, one-of-a-kind revolver with infinite bullets. Our first quest had us clearing out a nest of monsters outside of an elven village. The elven major promised several hundred gold and a handful of potions as our reward. The dungeon was filled with Grell, basically tentacle monsters with beaks and taser sticks. After 8 or 9 encounters of getting electrocuted and bitten and then healed back up, we went back to the village, only for the mayor to summon 24 guards and kick us out of town empty-handed. This became the norm for our quests. Arrive in a new town, get asked to handle a problem, fight and lose 8+ encounters, then leave empty-handed. We couldn't refuse the quests because thou must. We couldn't ask for a payment in advance because thou mustn't. For a group of townfolk who couldn't handle their local problems, they sure did have a bunch of powerful armed guards ready to kick us out of town every time. In 18 months, the party received almost no rewards of any kind. The DM ensured that enemy weapons broke after they were downed, their armor was ruined by battle, and they carried nothing of value on their persons. The few items of value we found were intentionally unusable by the party, like a +1 bastard sword, or an intact suit of half-plate, stuff nobody could use effectively. Even in those cases, every vendor we found refused to purchase any of our equipment, magical or otherwise, not even for a fraction of its value. Our expenses, however, were very real. The monk ran out of money almost immediately, and the rogue and I had to start paying for their room and board. We stopped buying arrows almost immediately because we couldn't afford them. When we needed to board the ship, we had to sign up as hard laborers just to afford paying for the Chosen One's ticket. My character started with about 100 gold pieces. By the end of the adventure, my character had less than 10 gold pieces. The DMPC, of course, always had enough gold to pay for her own expenses, but would never lend us so much as a bent copper piece. We had a +1 dagger, with a unique property that I could count as silver, cold iron, adamantine, etc., for the purpose of overcoming enemy damage reduction, but only one at a time, and changing type costs your action. Sounds good, right? Except the DM that threw monsters at us with extremely high damage reduction, only overcome by one of those materials, then made figuring out which arbitrarily impossible. This forced the rogue to have to try random materials, unable to break through even with sneak attack damage, until he inevitably got pummeled into the ground. It also reduced the monk's damage to basically 0. But we were losing every fight already, so not much had changed. My divination wizard was essentially a commoner. My divination spells never revealed anything. Enemies were resistant or immune to the damage my spells did. My buff spells were counterspelled or despelled almost immediately. When I started resorting to magic missile, every enemy had shield cast on them. The players were restricted to content from the player's handbook, while enemy NPCs regularly had psionic powers, tomb of battle maneuvers, vile feats, and random abilities that were clearly homebrewed or made up on the spot. Over the course of the campaign, we kept finding these blue crystal magic items that were very important to the plot. Unfortunately, we never found out what they actually did, because the big bad or her minions would always show up right after we got one and take it from us effortlessly. In these rare cases, the DMPC would always have vanished or run off to protect the chosen one, and would thus blame us for our failure once they got back. The big bad of the campaign was a female sorcerer of 13th level or higher who enjoyed teleporting in front of the party and taunting us. Any attempt of violence against her reduced the PC to 0 hit points instantly, no saving throw. The big bad would also hit on the monk relentlessly, which was really the DM hitting on the monk's player, despite him being a cis straight guy and her being openly lesbian. When the monk player got a girlfriend, the DM stopped hitting on her. He then started dating a girl who looked just like the monk player and brought her into the game as a paladin. Paladin, naturally, had several magic items, no attributes below 16, bonus feats and features, and 2 paladin flunkies who followed her around and protected her in combat. In addition, enemies started targeting Monk first and knocking her out, usually in the first round of combat. Shortly before I stopped playing, the DM revealed to me that the entire campaign was a book he had written before the game started, in which the Chosen One and DMPC were the protagonists. Our characters weren't in his book at all, which certainly explained why none of our choices amounted to anything. Realizing that my presence at the table didn't even matter was the final straw. I told the DM that I wasn't having fun with the campaign, and he told me, "I'm not here for you to have fun." That's when I finally left the campaign and stopped hanging out with the DM. The rogue quit the game the week after I did, upon learning what I'd learned. The monk stuck around a bit longer, but eventually quit when the DM petrified her character and told her to sit quietly until she was unpetrified. She somehow managed to endure 2 whole sessions of coming to the table and sitting quietly while DM and Paladin played a solo game before she finally gave up and quit. This DM really needs to learn how to be a DM. Writing a story and forcing players to play in it and making it impossible to do anything makes the whole game just horrible. Wouldn't even want to play it. And for the DM to say that he's not there for the players to have fun is so incorrect also. The whole reason of D&D, from my ideas, is that it's for everyone to have fun. Where the world changes with each choice the players make, random encounters that can fail or won't fail, to have those experiences that makes D&D fun. It's not about a book that the DM wrote. It should never be a book the DM wrote. There are some instances where people write books based on D&D experiences, but that's totally different. And if I'm being honest here, that book, if he did write it, sounds horrible because it just perfectly aligns with the protagonists, and that just seems pretty boring. And then the monk. To target the monk because he was obviously hurt, his ego was hurt by her rejection, was so childlike. But the whole thing was childlike, so. Anyways, I hope to see you next time at Lace's Dungeon. Goodbye!